Hey there, this is Joe Galli with the National Wrestling Alliance, and you're listening to the Ringsiders podcast.
Welcome to Ringsiders. Jamie and Callum here, and today we have a very special guest. He's the voice of NWA, Mr. Joe Galli. Hi, Joe. Thanks for joining us.
Hey, guys. How's it going?
Very good.
We're great, thank you.
Well, just want to throw in as well, Joe. We normally have three of us. Our friend Kurt as a family thing, but we thought we'd just throw his name in there because he's a big fan as well. So
yeah, he's actually quite sad that he couldn't make it today.
That's all right. I could just take his spot, you know?
Yeah, that's fine.
That's
I'll
fine.
just move right in. I'll just move right in.
Joe, you're a great third man. I mean, you can make this a permanent thing if you want.
Woohoo!
Yeah,
I can move to England? That'd be fun.
Yeah.
We'd like to wish Kurt the best of his future endeavours while
You had a good run, Kurt, but you've been replaced.
So, Joe, I always like to ask our guests, first of all, have you always been a wrestling fan?
You know, I think it's fair to say that I have. You know, I started watching in the Attitude Era as a kid. You know, we'd have the first versions of Friday Night SmackDown. If it was Friday nights at the time, it could have been Tuesday. But either way, you know, on the floor watching it with my dad passed out on the couch. And then I got really more into it in high school. I had some high school friends that were very passionate about pro wrestling. And then it just kind of turns out that all of us ended up sticking with it as far as not only being fans, but also making careers out of it. My two very good high school friends, I'd say best high school friends, one of them is currently a producer over in NXT, and the other one works at the office at the LA New Japan dojo.
Oh,
so
that's
kind of
cool.
interesting that, you know, three dudes who all went to the same Catholic high school in Los Angeles all ended up working in the wrestling business, all coming
really
out of the same theater class. It's really weird. But hey, you know, when you're passionate about something and you got supportive folks, that's kind of how it is. And if you want to live your dream, you can.
Absolutely. I say, wasn't it? It's always been that one thing that's always there for us.
Yeah, I've always found that with groups of, like, if you're in a group of friends who like wrestling when you're younger, you get some who really stick with it, or you end up never watching it again. I found, like, there's no grey area in between. It's either you stick with wrestling or you kind of like not grow out of it. I hate the word grow out of wrestling, but like you don't follow it for those years after. And I think with us, it's always been, we're quite similar in that sense. We were massive wrestling fans when we were younger, and we've kind of just stuck with it as well.
Well, I'm 36 next month, Joe, and I've been watching, you know, since the Hogan, late 80s, and it's just always been there, and it's always going to be there. It's that one constant that I can't be without.
Yeah.
You know.
And it's a great time to be a wrestling fan now.
It's a fantastic time. It really
couldn't
is.
be better. So.
I can't recall a better time to be a wrestling fan. Like, there's so much variety and like on-demand wrestling that you can get in 2020. If you're a fan of a promotion, chances are you can watch it online, streaming it, and that's something that you didn't have before. And I think a lot of fans actually don't realize how spoiled we are nowadays, especially with like NWA Powerrr, for example, being readily available on YouTube. If you'd have said that we could have that like 10 years ago, I wouldn't have believed you, but it's so readily accessible now. And do you think that's a benefit for the industry as a whole, Joe, like how accessible wrestling is now?
Yes, and it's the way it needs to be, because that's the way everything is successful needs to be. You know, it used to be, let's say you had a problem at a Starbucks or another coffee shop. What are you going to do? You would write a letter to some corporate person. Now you just send a tweet out with your complaint, and you get an answer back immediately, you know, and maybe a free cup of coffee. And so everything in our society has changed to this need for immediacy and need for accessibility. And so that has to work with professional wrestling. It has to work with other forms of entertainment like television, and even with movies, you need to be able to have interaction with folks. And so being able to be open and being able for our folks being able to have access to things when they want and how they want, I mean, it's the only way that you're going to be successful. You just need to be able to find smart ways to market yourself and make money off of that. And everybody's doing a pretty good job of that right now. NWA, AEW, WWE, New Japan, everybody's making money right now, which is fantastic. And so that this bubble hasn't burst, and I think it's going to continue on, and it's going to continue to grow. And I don't see anything in the future that shows any signs that people are going to turn their nose to professional wrestling anytime soon. I mean, just look at the recent announcement from WWE where they're going to go back to my hometown of Los Angeles for WrestleMania, and they're going to have a record-setting over 100,000 seats that are going to be super expensive seats. So you could just see how the hunger for good pro wrestling is out there. Even the hunger for not so good pro wrestling is out there. You could go to a bunch of indie shows in the middle of nowhere, and you're still in a packed American Legion Hall or a packed nightclub, and people want to sit there and they want to be a part of something and they want to be entertained.
Yeah, that's true. Wrestling as a whole right now, from the indies to the bigger promotions, are actually getting like record attendance levels at the moment. And that must be, like you said, it's down to how easy it is to follow a promotion nowadays. And going back to what you said about like people want things immediately and the benefit of having NWA Powerrr on YouTube. So as soon as it airs, you can watch it all. Do you think NWA Powerrr is best suited to YouTube, or can you see it eventually like trying to find a television deal, or perhaps going to Fight TV, for example? Or do you think YouTube's the best place for it right now?
Well, I do think it certainly right now it is the best place for it. And there's major disadvantages to having a television deal. I've got some very good friends that live across the border in Canada, and they can't watch Dynamite because their channel doesn't go over across the border in Canada. So when you're trying to appeal to an international market, you're shooting yourself in the foot by having a quote unquote TV deal. And you can, of course, you can expand and make international deals and end up on some channel in some other country. But I think right now what we want and what's going to enable us to grow, and especially to grow a fan base for what is essentially a brand new product, is to have that open availability. And I want to be able to allow wrestling fans in England, Italy, Japan, Wuhan, China, if they're trapped in their apartment trying to hide from the coronavirus, I want to give them 16 hours of entertainment that they could go in, or 18 hours at this point, that they could go just onto their computer. Now, they'd have to go through the Chinese firewall, but that's besides the point. But they'd be able to enjoy a really great wrestling product.
I'd be happy locked in a room for 16 hours watching wrestling.
I think we've all done it.
We've all done it. We've all been there.
What would you say so far the biggest differences between creating a YouTube product to standard television, for example?
There really isn't. The broadcast that we have at NWA Powerrr follows a very traditional television format. And I think that if you were to take our show and go on the network and find old episodes of Georgia Championship Wrestling, you'll see a lot of similarities with the way the whole thing is structured and how it's presented. So it's still a television program. It's just on a different platform. And, some people, especially when we first started, were giving us some heat, especially when we introduced the TV title. And it's like, but you guys aren't on TV. Well, if that's the way the world worked right now, then none of the shows on Netflix or Hulu would qualify for the Emmys. And yet they do, and they win. But they're available online through this online platform. So it's just the way that television is changing and evolving. And for the most part, the vast majority of fans that I know that watch NWA Powerrr, they're still watching it on a television. It's just on a television through a YouTube app, or they're streaming it through their phone and then they mirror it onto their TV. So it is still television, and we format it.
I watch it on my TV on YouTube. Yeah.
And that's how we shoot it. That's how it's designed to be watched. It's designed to, you can enjoy it in your living room with your whole family. And so there's really not a whole lot of difference. If for some reason someone decides to back up a Brinks truck to Billy Corgan's house and say, we're going to give you millions and billions of dollars to put NWA Powerrr on TBS or Turner or even one of the big networks, Fox or whatever, it probably wouldn't be too different than what it is now.
Yeah, that's really good. I think it's one of the smartest moves I've seen in wrestling in a while is putting NWA Powerrr on YouTube, creating that demand for it and that fan base, because the NWA already had fans. Like, we've been fans of the NWA for a while, especially you, Jamie.
I love the NWA. I love the history of the NWA. You know, I could sit for hours, Joe, and watch old Harley Race matches and Terry Funk and Dusty Rhodes. I'm a NWA for life.
But it's cool seeing all of these new fans come out of the woodwork too, because they might not have been familiar with the old NWA, but putting this like contemporary spin on the NWA has brought out so many new wrestling NWA fans. And I think it's one of the best moves I've seen in a while, creating that demand for it. And like you said, if it does go to TV, it's not going to be too much difference and not much would change. But it's so refreshing to see how many people are supporting NWA Powerrr. Like, as soon as I saw the intro of the first episode, I was like, I'm going to enjoy this. Yeah. Just the theme song for it sold me. The way it was done, like an 80s territory, you know, like an old proper NWA, but it also felt new at the same time. And I think that was the key thing. It was the NWA you know and love, but done with a modern spin. And how important do you think it is, Joe, that like it has that modern spin put on it?
Well, we need it. I mean, we can't just be going out and doing exactly what happened in the past, because people can't see it. They have seen it, and you can see it again. So we have to bring something new, and we have to bring something creative, and we have to challenge ourselves creatively to try to find some things that people are going to like and they're going to enjoy. And I think what really gives us a really good advantage is our roster. I mean, we've got some extremely talented guys, some of which were never given a proper platform, but are now getting that. And I think a good example of that could be Zicky Dice. You know, I've worked with Zicky for 6 years, maybe longer, back when Zicky Dice was on working shows on Championship Wrestling from Hollywood. Zicky Dice, if you want to go way back into the latest version of the NWA, if you go to the 10 Pounds of Gold, I believe it's the first episode, you're going to see Zicky Dice fighting Tim Storm, or maybe he fights Nick Aldis. It's one of the first episodes where you see a much heavier and a much different version of Zicky Dice, but that guy has worked his butt off to become outlandish Zicky Dice. He's in the best shape of his life, and he hasn't really had an opportunity to show what he can do up until this point. And now he's really becoming a star, not only on our program, but I know Zicky's in high demand now internationally. People want to see Zicky Dice, and they should have always wanted to have him, but they just didn't know that he existed. He was this diamond in the rough. And through this program with Dave Lagana and Billy Corgan and the TV title and everything around it, it gave an opportunity to put a mic in his hand, and you could see this character, and you could see his work in the ring. And especially for all you guys that are really into old school NWA, boy, does he have reflections of a lot of the greats in what he does in the ring. And so I think that us having this incredible roster, I mean, Zicky Dice is just one example. We've got so many of folks that are talented pro wrestlers that are great on the mic at any time. You know, one thing you got to realize, I don't know if you could ask any of the folks that go to our tapings, we don't do second takes. We don't do it. You're going. You know, it's like a rock concert. If you fail, you fail. And so far, nobody's really failed at all. And that just goes to show just how dedicated these guys and gals are to their craft, both in the ring and on the mic. And that's what's really drawing people in. People love our promos because they're good and they're legit and you believe them. And some organizations right now, I think, are struggling in that area.
Yeah, you mean with the scripted promos, which you can. I want to see a wrestler be himself or herself. I want to see that passion. I don't want to know they've memorized 3 paragraphs before they've come out. And NWA does that perfectly. But I'm glad you mentioned Zicky Dice, though, Joe, because I've been mentioning to Callum and Kerr for weeks, haven't I? And I'm just blown away. Zicky Dice has become like my favourite guy at the moment in the entire industry. And I've actually been tweeting with him the last couple of nights, back and forth, just talking. And I think the guy is a megastar. He's amazing. And he's such a nice guy. He's so polite when we talk. And you can see that he wants this. He really wants to be a star, doesn't he?
Yeah, he does, and I think what's important is not only does he want it, he has enough drive to get it, and that's what's important. And you believe everything that's coming from Zicky Dice. I mean, granted, he also thinks he's in 1982, but you believe that he believes he's in 1982, and so that's what's so great about him as a character. And a lot of that, it's not like he showed up at NWA Powerrr and he was this, ball of clay that needed to be molded by Billy Corgan, David Lagana. He came with a lot of the tools already there. We just needed to refine it and point it in a direction to where it would be successful for our television broadcast. And he had the experience working in television on David Marquez's programming at Championship Wrestling from Hollywood. And I think he also worked at Championship Wrestling from Arizona. So we already had that foundation, because working on television and wrestling is a lot different than working at, your standard indie shows. And you could see that in certain matches, because you have to know where cameras are. You need to be able to convey things, not just to an audience that's in the crowd, but you have to be able to come through that camera in order to basically be in someone's living room and then give them some sort of emotional connection. And Zicky's very good at that. And as I mentioned before, all of our guys and gals are good at that.
Well, yeah, another guy who I think is going to be huge is Ricky Starks. What's your thoughts on Ricky?
I love Ricky. I mean, just from a dude's perspective, he's a great guy and he's super respectful, down to earth, and he's constantly learning. I mean, he is always asking guys questions. Especially, what's great about our program is you got so many veterans in the back, where what better information can you get when you're on your match if you're going to get notes from Ricky Morton and Robert Gibson, the guys who've seen it all and they've done it all. And so he's constantly evolving and he's constantly learning. He's got a great look. He's leaned into this persona that he has as Ricky Starks, and boy, does he also put the work in. I mean, a lot of the things that you see in his commercial, that Stark line commercial that he has on his Twitter profile and stuff, that's all stuff that he produced on his own, all stuff that he has this identity that he knows who he is. And I think that's what's really important about all of our professional wrestlers that we have at NWA, is they have an identity and they know who they are. And that's sometimes the biggest problem that you have in pro wrestling, is you have people who don't really understand who they are or what they're supposed to be or what their motivations are. And if you don't have that, you can't communicate that to an audience. So you really have to know and have that identity, and Ricky Starks certainly has that. Plus, he's good looking. It doesn't hurt that he's pretty,
Yeah, right.
I wish I had his physique and his looks, and he's different. And being from New Orleans, Louisiana, his voice sounds a lot different than a lot of the guys out there. And so when you have this combination of, one, he's a really great and talented professional wrestler. Two, he's really good on the mic. Three, he's good looking. And also, he's just different enough to set himself apart from the pack. He's a star. He's a star. And Nick Aldis calls him a star. And when, the champ is saying this guy is a future champ, you have to listen.
Yeah, I hadn't heard of Ricky Starks before in NWA Powerrr. And he's one of these guys where as soon as I saw him, I was like, how have I never seen this guy before? But yeah, I'm glad he's one of the talents that has got his chance with NWA Powerrr to get to that bigger audience. Because I think he's, like you said, he was with Zicky Dice, he's a bit of a diamond in the rough, perhaps.
Yeah, he is. And, what's great is we have this great core of people that are relative unknowns until we started doing this show. But at the same point, we've got a lot of, very established stars that absolutely know what they're doing and have become stars again. And I feel like Trevor Murdoch is the best example of that.
I was just going to mention him to you, actually.
I mean, Trevor, all the success that he had in WWE and him talk about looking very different than any other pro wrestler out there. I mean, he looks like that throwback pro wrestler. That's just forgive me, Aaron Stevens. He looks like your shooter. He's going to come after you. And for him to come in, and then he didn't even expect to have such a warm reception from that crowd in the NWA arena and online. Everyone's like, "Where's Trevor Murdoch been?" This guy, I mean, when he hits you in the chest, it's like getting hit with a 2x4. And he has all this passion, all this history. I mean, he's trained by Harley Race, so he has this direct connection to the 10 pounds of gold. And boy, can he work a mic, and you believe what he says, and you know that he's passionate about it. I mean, Trevor Murdoch is so passionate about pro wrestling, and you feel it, and you hear it when he's talking, and he's cutting those promos on Aaron Stevens about him being a coward and how he doesn't deserve to be a championship. You feel that emotion coming from this guy that, you know, some other organizations might not give a second look to. And so it's it's just another great example of how we have such a diverse roster of so many different folks from so many backgrounds and so much expertise, and all of that's being shown on NWA Powerrr, and it's resonating, and people really enjoy what we have.
Yeah, I was so happy when I watched the episode and Trevor Murdoch debuted, because I've been a big fan of Trevor since back in the WWE days, and like you said, he would not be out of place in the NWA back in the 70s and the 80s with Harley Race and Ric Flair's. He fits the mold for NWA for me, and I think he's a very, very good guy to have on your roster. I really do.
And he has such a great mind for wrestling too. I mean, what you guys see on the screen doesn't show how much work that he puts in behind the scenes, and how much, you know, a lot of the ideas and, you know, certain structures of certain matches and the way certain things are produced. I mean, with his level of experience, and he goes through, you know, people look at him and think, wow, well, he must be just some dumb country bumpkin. But I think he has one of the best wrestling minds in the business, bar none.
We've spoken about what the in-ring talent are bringing to NWA Powerrr, but what would you say Billy Corgan has brought to the new NWA that wasn't there before?
Well, everything. I mean, without him, it doesn't exist. It's his vision, and he's had this vision for a long time. You know, it was several years ago when I was in Los Angeles working at Championship Wrestling from Hollywood, when they were starting the 10 Pounds of Gold series, when they pulled me aside and they said, we really like what I was doing there as the lead commentator there. And like, we have ideas, we have plans for a TV show, and we want you to be a part of it. But that was years ago. I mean, that was back when Tim Storm was still the champ, and they had a vision and an idea. And I think what's great about Billy is he is so talented in so many different ways. Obviously as a musician, but also as a businessman. And he's really laid out plans, and definitely working with Dave Lagana as far as storylines and things go, and producing a lot of the segments, and getting that momentum going with the 10 Pounds of Gold series, which you're going to start seeing more of, by the way. I think he had a 2-year and a 5-year and a 10-year and a 20-year plan. And I don't have the specifics on those, but I will tell you that I think we're very far, we're much further ahead than he anticipated, because of all the momentum we have with the fans. And so it's a very exciting time. I know we're looking forward to the Crockett Cup. I'm not sure when this podcast will air, so I don't know if it'll be announced by the time where it's going to be, but it's at a larger venue in Atlanta, and I know we're going to sell a lot of the seats, if not all the seats, in this larger venue. And it's all part of the design that we have going forward with NWA, and without Billy Corgan, it doesn't exist. It's not there. And he also has an incredible mind for pro wrestling as well. I mean, obviously he had his time where he worked at TNA and at Impact, which gave him a great foundation for how the television business works. But even before then, being a fan of pro wrestling, I mean, you could talk pro wrestling with Billy Corgan for hours. I mean, he just has one of those minds where he remembers matches and he remembers storylines, and he's a wealth of talent and information. And as long as we're making money, I think it's going to keep on going.
Speaking of this plan that you mentioned from Billy Corgan, I know you don't know specifics. Mm-hmm. Even if you did, I wouldn't expect you to tell them on a podcast. But do you reckon sometime in the future, for the UK fans listening, we might get to see the NWA in the UK? Well, you know, fortunately, you have had opportunities where Nick Aldis has brought the championship to other shows that are there in the United Kingdom. He's brought it over there during interim shooting times for us at NWA Powerrr. So as far as us having like an NWA Powerrr, a pay-per-view or something like that in the UK, I could see that it would be a little while before I think we went internationally with that.
But also, it wouldn't surprise me if it didn't. And I'll tell you why. If you look back at the 10 Pounds of Gold series, one of the biggest matches was when Colt Cabana challenged for the title on mainland China. They managed to make a partnership with Dave Marquez at the time, was working with promotions in China. And I believe for the first time that title was defended in that country with Nick Aldis and Colt Cabana. And unfortunately, I think it is basically in that epicenter where the coronavirus, not to bring this podcast down and keep talking about horrible infectious disease. But and I don't think anybody saw that coming either. No one saw that as being a success or a draw or something like that, especially in a country where they really don't understand pro wrestling. It's just not part of their culture, and it's very different. And then, but then, we get there and it fills the stadium and they love it. And if we can go to China, we certainly can go to London. I don't see any problem with that.
Yeah, that's really cool to think of, actually. Like, even though it's not a big part of the culture, it shows how wrestling can speak to anybody of any language or of any background. Like, it's such a relatable medium. Like, even if you're not a fan of, I've always said, I think there's something in wrestling for everybody. There's so many different styles of wrestling. There is something there for everyone to enjoy. So I think it speaks volumes when you can go to China where it isn't part of the culture and it sells out a stadium.
Right, because it's always evolving and it's always changing. And when you go into markets like China and even like India, for instance, or even like what WWE is doing in the Middle East, you're introducing this product that works. I mean, pro wrestling's worked since the early 1900s, being as a form of entertainment. Obviously, it's changed and evolved, but it's a draw, and you can make money doing it, and you can make memories doing it, which I think is probably more important than making money. And so, if it worked in America in 1923, it certainly can work, and it's continued to work all the way to 2020. Then it certainly can work in places like other countries where it hasn't had an opportunity to sprout, and especially with everything that we have and the pageantry and the story that you can tell with it, it just kind of goes to show that it can work anywhere. I mean, I could tell you how many I went to New Japan G1 Climax in Dallas, and there were so many New Japan fans there, and I'll bet that 99.99% of them that were in the American Airlines Arena don't speak Japanese. And so that kind of really goes to show, like, you've got these people from another culture. A lot of the guys in the ring don't speak hardly any English. And so what are they going to do promo-wise? Well, it doesn't matter, because that style of wrestling, for those types of fans, they don't care. They're into what they're seeing in the ring. And it's successful here in America when, by all accounts, if you look at it on paper, it probably shouldn't be. But there it is. And the fans are there, and they're making money. And they have a dojo in LA now, and it's fantastic.
Speaking of like the international side of things and coming to the UK, how familiar with British wrestling are you?
Not as familiar as you guys, I'm sure. You see the British style, and you see I probably know a lot more of the modern day guys that are sort of into it. Your Zack Sabre Jr.'s and the like. But as far as like the history of it and all that sort of stuff, I'd like to think that our champion is probably one of the best representations of the British style of wrestling. I mean,
Absolutely.
He is.
Yeah.
He's from Kingsland, and he's our champion. He's the real world's champion, and nobody's taking that strap from. And the next challenger is Marty Scurll. So
yeah.
If you really put it together here, like, wow, like it's never been a time to be a fan of the British style of wrestling because it's being put on this huge platform.
Yeah, it's such a cool thing to think of that at the Crockett Cup, Aldis Scurll for the NWA World Championship, two British guys doing us proud.
And then you have Stu Bennett, who's going to be calling the action next to me. It's like, wait a minute.
Yeah, it's an exciting time to be a British wrestling fan too. And the reason I brought up the British wrestling scene is because there's so many names here. Like, we'll just have discussions where where would we like to see these British guys go? Guys like Nathan Cruz, who you might be familiar with. He's a guy who is very much like Nick Aldis, and he's someone I could see just holding that NWA World Championship. Like, Aldis versus Cruz for us as British wrestling fans is a money match.
It's a dream match, yeah.
Yeah. But is there anybody in the British wrestling scene who hasn't had that chance yet that you'd like to see?
You know, I'm not familiar enough to name names with it, but I will tell you this: if there is somebody out there, and we can shine a light on them and we can make a deal, I'm very, very certain that the higher ups at NWA, your Billy Corgans, your Dave Laganas, and whatnot, they'll make that happen. And if we can make it happen to where we could do a good partnership with some organization, like we have our partnership with Ring of Honor Wrestling Hair, if we could do another partnership with another UK brand to kind of fill things out and, you know, have some, it's expensive to ship a wrestling ring across across the Atlantic. So so as long as there's good business and I know there's good wrestlers there, and I could list off, you know, I'm here in San Antonio, Texas, and I could tell you 3 or 4 guys out here that you've never heard of that probably would be fantastic and on NWA Powerrr, or to even challenge for one of the championships. And that just kind of goes to show the popularity and how great wrestling is you have so many people out there that are fighting for this dream and they're trying to do something with it. And you're going to get those people that are stars and they're right on that cusp. But, you know, there's only one main event on every match, you know, and to fight to get that spot, I mean, you got to earn it. You got to be good. You got to pay your dues. And if they already have over there in the UK, it wouldn't be surprising for us for either them to come over and be a part of Powerrr, or for us to come onto British soil and then have a good show there too.
That would be so cool.
Yeah, because we're very lucky British wrestling fans with what we've got at the moment. Like Callum said, there's Nathan Cruz. There's another guy, Lucas Steele, who's making a big name for himself on the UK scene at the moment. He's just fantastic. He's 6'6", he's about 250 pounds, and he's only 23 years old. And he's just he's making a name for himself everywhere.
That just sounds like a young Nick Aldis at that point.
Well,
a taller version of a young Nick Aldis.
There we go.
And look where he is now. So
he's making big names for himself. I think he's just toured Japan as well. Actually, at the moment,
he's touring with All Japan Pro Wrestling.
Yeah.
But he's just looking at him. He looks like a star. And even Hulk Hogan tweeted him and said, "Wow, you've got the body. You look like a star." And I was like, when you get endorsed by Hulk Hogan, that's pretty much a seal of approval.
Yeah. Look, brother.
Yeah.
Well, then when you got that and you're willing to travel and put the work in, you'll end up landing somewhere. And whether that is going to be the WWE Performance Center or Ring of Honor or us or New Japan, I mean, there's plenty of places to go and work your craft and make money doing it.
Oh yeah, I think he'll make it. He's so driven and it's a pleasure to watch. You can see the passion, and I say he's 23 years old, so he's got the world ahead of him, and I think he's going to be a huge star wherever he ends up.
Yeah, sure. Joe, before we start wrapping things up, there's one question that I wanted to ask. We brought up Stu Bennett earlier. What's it been like working with him so far? And what's been the biggest difference working with him to Jim Cornette?
Well, working with Stu's been fantastic. And, you know, he had some big shoes to fill with Jim Cornette. I mean, Jim Cornette is a fantastic commentator, you know, arguably the best person on a headset or with a microphone. Despite what you might feel about his politics or certain remarks that he says, I mean, his talent and his expertise in pro wrestling speaks for itself.
Yeah, we're big Cornette fans.
Yeah.
Yeah. But Stu was able to just slide right on in and take that role and just grab it by the horns. And initially I was a little concerned because I'd worked with Jim Cornette on other pay-per-views before, and we talked a lot, and I knew I had a chemistry with him and I knew it worked. And me and Stu really didn't even kind of get a dark match to kind of figure out how this is going to work. Because doing commentary, it's like dancing. You need to have some chemistry. You have to have some pacing. You need to be able to work, see how well this partnership's going to bond together. Otherwise, you're stepping all over each other, or you have different ideas on how to tell a story, and sometimes it doesn't work. But what was so great about Stu is we gelled instantly. I mean, just immediately we had fantastic chemistry. He has a wonderful mind for the business, as you can imagine with a guy with the kind of experience that he has. He's fantastic on the mic, which everybody knew from, you know, back in the Nexus days. And so I think it's something that I've really, really enjoyed is working with Stu Bennett, and I've learned a lot from him as well. And I think that's actually what's really great about being in the position that I'm in and getting these great color guys to come in that have been, with WWE or in Jim Cornette, been everywhere, is I get to learn so much from them about this craft of doing wrestling commentary, which it's different than any other type of business in the world. You could compare it to other sports commentary, but it's very, very different as to what you're doing and the amount of work that you need to do to put into it in order to drive what you're trying to drive and tell the stories that you're trying to tell. And so I love Stu, and I hope that he is sitting next to me for the coming years. And I know that he loves the product. He loves the show. He loves our fans, and I couldn't be happier to have Stu as my commentary partner.
That's really cool to hear, because as a fan watching it, like you said, he just slid straight into it. Like when I think back now, it's like he's always been there on commentary with you, and I think that's a testament to you both as a team. Because sometimes when you have a commentary team that doesn't quite gel, it kind of stands out a bit, but with you and Stu, it just seems natural, and nobody, like you said, nobody's stepping on each of his toes, because even doing a two-man podcast with Jamie, sometimes we step on each of his toes, so I can't imagine how hard it is to do commentary. But you're a great team, and
thank you.
I think that's pretty much everything.
I do have one last question, Joe.
Sure, keep them coming. I'm good.
Please, will you continue to try and get Camille to speak?
That is my quest in life at this point. At some point, I will get her to talk into a microphone inside the NWA arena, even if it kills me, which it might.
I don't envy you, because I see the look on her eyes.
And her and Tom, who's obviously also getting pretty annoyed at this point. But it's the biggest mystery in pro wrestling right now is why won't Camille talk, or what does she have to say, or what's going on in her mind? And I'm going to be the one to find it out for sure.
Well, I hope you do, because I think we're all curious as to why. Just don't get yourself hurt in the process.
You know what? Being a journalist is one of the most dangerous professions on planet Earth, and I knew that going into it 10 years ago, and I'm willing to do whatever it takes to get the information that people deserve to know.
Well, I respect that.
Yeah,
that's true journalism.
Mm-hmm. We know you'll do it. We have every faith in you.
That's the biggest payoff in pro wrestling. That'll be.
I'm looking forward to that day. And I wish I can't at this point. I can't even anticipate what she's gonna say, but she'll talk. I'll make it happen.
Joe, I also want to ask as well, if we're just asking random questions now. When I was doing some research, I saw something that made me laugh a little bit, and it said you're a huge cat person. Mm-hmm. Do you have any cats then? And if so, how many?
I have 3 cats. If you go to my Twitter at Joe Galli News, I just posted my Catterday photos. There's
brilliant.
Ted, Billy, and Megatron.
That's the best name.
Yeah, they're my babies. And it wasn't like I haven't really been a cat person my whole life. It's sort of something like my mother was in a position where she needed to move out of a house, and she had Ted, and so she's like, I need to put Ted somewhere. I'm like, well, I'll just take him for a little while, and then Ted became my cat. And then I started dating this my girlfriend, who is a huge cat person, and we moved to Texas, and she's like, well, if I move to Texas with you, we have to get a second cat. And I was like, okay, fine. So then we got Billy from the shelter. And then about a year ago, I was doing a story in a very small town called Carrizo Springs, and I was doing a live report from the highway, and I saw this little fur ball crossing the street, and it was an injured kitten. And I was like, oh, crap. So I ran into the highway, which thankfully there was not a lot of traffic going on, and I grabbed this kitten, and I brought it back, and I nursed this kitten back to health and named her Megatron. We call her Ronnie for short. It's one of those. It's a joy in life because I can't think of a better night than me sitting down, enjoying maybe some Chipotle, some Mexican food or something, having a cat on my lap and a glass of scotch in my hand. That's just fantastic.
You're a man of my own heart, Joe.
Yeah, I'm glass of scotch. And I'm actually getting a kitten myself in a few days, Joe. So
Mazel tov!
Yes. Yes. I believe I get her on Wednesday.
Aww.
Which is perfect because I can watch NWA Powerrr with my new kitten on my lap with a glass of scotch myself.
Oh, that. Trust me, man. It's heaven. It's heaven.
I'm just having a look at the pictures now from your Catterday post.
Mm-hmm.
They are really cute. Is
They
one
are.
of them a Bengal, or it looks a bit?
You
more
know, she's that would be Megatron, and right. I don't think she is. There's here in Texas. There's a lot of stray cats that look like that. So I don't.
Okay.
I think it's just sort of a Texas type of wild-ish sort of cat. A lot of strays out there have that sort of pattern with them. So, and she's wild. She'll attack my feet. She's vicious. I could bring her on NWA Powerrr, and she could go toe to toe. Like she could go the distance. You just got to get the laser pointer and point him at her opponent, and boom, she'll go right after.
Also, when I was doing a little bit of research, a little bit of digging, it said you're a huge cat fan, which you've confirmed, and you're also a black coffee fan. We're both sat here drinking black coffee right now. Is there a certain brand of black coffee that you might want to give a shout out to that we should try?
Ooh, you know what? Bullet's good. Bullet. There's a Bullet brand called Bullet that's pretty good, and also, all the little. I've had the fortunateness. I've been fortunate enough to live in a lot of different places across the country, and I like going to small mom and pop coffee shops. I mean, Starbucks is great, and Starbucks is fun, and it's available everywhere. And I have the app on my phone, and blah blah blah. But when you go to little mom and pop ones, and you're able to support those small businesses that are making their own roasts, it's fantastic. And one of my favorite ones was a place, and maybe it's just because they have the same name as me. It's called the Flying Joe, and they're in Toledo, Ohio. I lived there for 3 years. And boy, do they make just the best roast over there. And I miss it. I would fly back to Ohio just to go get a cup of coffee from them. That's how good it is.
Yeah, I found I never used to enjoy coffee that much, especially black coffee. But when I started working at the offices that I'm working at now, and I had ground bean coffee for the first time, I was like, this is life-changing. And now I'm quite picky with my coffees. Right. And I can only drink it black.
Well, it's an acquired thing,
Yeah,
and drinking, my girlfriend throws more sugar and cream in the coffee than there is coffee in there, and there's plenty of people that are like that, and that's fine. But it's a lot like drinking scotch, if you're a big whiskey fan and you're going to enjoy whiskey neat or on the rocks. Not everybody can do that or wants to do that, but it's an acquired thing, and I've acquired it. Yeah, and
again, we're both Scotch neat, aren't we?
Yeah, neat Scotch.
It's an acquired taste, but that's how I like my Scotch. I like my coffee black.
Well, we should hang out sometime. I think I need to charter a flight.
Yeah, let's do it. Like we said, you're a full-time member of the podcast now. So.
Yeah.
Oh, that's right.
We forgot that other guy's name that used to do it.
The hours
it's a business
alone,
expense.
Isn't great.
Yeah, it's a business expense for me to travel out there. There we go. That's fine. I'll get it.
We'll go hit up some wrestling shows.
Yeah, that'd be great. That'd be fun. I'd have a great time.
Hey, well, we might be in LA next year if you're doing anything in the area. Maybe we can meet up for a scotch or a coffee.
I would love
doing that. WrestleMania weekend, so we might catch you out there, Joe.
Hey, if I'm there, it wouldn't surprise me to be there because who knows what we'll be doing. That's the great thing about WrestleMania is everything kind of sprouts out around it, and everybody's just there doing their own thing, trying to get some more eyeballs on their stuff. So it wouldn't surprise us for either NWA to be doing stuff or for me to just be there and enjoy the show, which I would also very much like.
A fan. Yeah.
As a fan, which would be nice.
Is there anything you'd like to shout out or plug before you go?
If people are listening to your podcast, they're probably already fans of NWA Powerrr. If they're not, thank you for listening this long to a guy you have no idea why you would be talking to. But just watch us every Tuesday, 6:05. Oh, the one thing I do want to plug is our new programming that we are going to be having on our YouTube channel, Circle Squared, where people are going to be competing to have an opportunity to earn a contract with the NWA. These are certainly people that you have never seen or never heard of, or maybe you've just barely heard of some of these folks that are going to be given an opportunity to show what they've got and to see if they can earn a spot on our programming. So there's that. NWA Girl Power is another program that's going to be coming out soon that's going to feature, you're going to learn a lot more about our female talent with some very in-depth interviews and some more content that's there. And coming up this week, I believe on Friday, I will be doing a quote-unquote exclusive interview with our new NWA World's Women's Champion, Thunder Rosa. And you will be able to find that in the UK if you go to foxsanantonio.com. That'll be available Friday evening. So Friday evening my time. So Saturday morning your time would be a good time to go look for that at foxsanantonio.com.
I will check that out.
And I'm sure we can find all of this anyway on your Twitter.
That's right. Yep. Go ahead and follow me on Twitter at Joe Galli News. I'm also on Facebook, Joe Galli TV, facebook.com/Joe Galli TV.
Awesome. Thank you so much for joining us today, Joe. It's been a pleasure to have you on.
Absolute pleasure.
My pleasure. My pleasure.
And I hope we can have you on again sometime in the future to discuss the follow-on from everything we've discussed today as well. And this will be going up tomorrow, so that'll be Sunday. If you're listening to it, it's already Sunday. But yeah, Joe, thanks for coming on. And you can find Ringsiders at Ringsiders Pod on Twitter, Ringsiders Pod on Instagram. Jamie, where can we find you?
I always forget this bit, Joe. I am Red Wolf JB on Twitter and Instagram.
Fantastic.
I'm not a big social media guy.
Yeah, neither am I, to be honest. But yeah, check out Ringsiders Pod on Twitter. That's where we post pretty much everything, including new episodes on our YouTube and iTunes and Spotify. Thanks again, Joe.
Yeah, thank you so much, Joe. Really appreciate it.
No problem, guys. Peace and love. Have a good one.
And we'll see you next week. Thank you.